Phil's a cold character. Let's talk about it. Phil was introduced as a kind-hearted and naive little boy, but to see how cold the nigga got gives me goosebumps. This dude was able to kind of deduce what was going on, knew what was going on, was aware of what was going on, and did not fumble the bag. Imagine being told that you're not going to be saved until 2 years later when you're not even sure and not even guaranteed assurance of your own life. And Phil took that deal with a smile. He's a GOAT. I want to talk about Phil from start to finish and then speculate on what he really did in the series. There was hidden gems here and there that showed us that Phil was a genius before we even knew he was a genius. I didn't do a whole heck of research for this one. Even though Promised Neverland is still fresh in my head, of course I may miss things here and there, but the first thing that really stood out to me about Phil was how he was always looking at the camera or towards the main cast in the background when all the other kids weren't paying attention. That's a really cold way of storytelling. A lot of stories do it, but I think Promised Neverland has perfected how to do it. Other series, it makes it very obvious that the person in the background knows what's going on. Alright, so if you take a look at episode 3 of Promised Neverland, you will notice that whole scene where they talk about how the most convenient place to put a tracking device on a human would be the ear. When they made that realization, it's cool to see how the camera's panning. Pay attention to that camera. When Norman made that realization that Carol, the newest born or the youngest person there, would be the key, because she's going to be one with the scar on her ear. But notice how the camera zooms in from like an angle that Phil can definitely get into, like a small little crevice, and it's the exact same height as Phil. And then right after, you see Phil running. That shit went right over my head the first time I watched that shit. But now that I think about it, that shit is wild. Like, this nigga Phil was on some other shit, bruh. How I see this, they won't do that for no reason. We could assume or we could think a little bit, oh, this is a little kid listening in. But they literally showed Phil right after running, looking surprised. Like, Phil is a cold character, because think about it like this, bruh. Imagine playing a video game where you're playing as Phil. Like, that would be the coolest thing ever. Like, he just got that little piece of information. Then you got that icon in the bottom right corner of the screen that showed like an auto save, because you don't want to forget the information you just got. And then you have to figure out what the next thing you should do. Should you monitor Carol now instead of monitoring Carol? Should you try and distract Isabella so Isabella does not catch on to the realization that, you know, Norma, Emma, and Ray did? Like, bro, there's a lot of layers to that whole scene. Like, that pan between the camera zooming through the vent towards Norman when he makes that realization that Carol is the key, and then boom, to the next shot, Phil is running in a panic. He's trying to figure out his next step. He's trying to figure out, what is my next move? Really cold. Really cold. In Promised Neverland, you have to go back and read panel by panel or go back and rewatch the anime, and you will see two things. Either the camera being as short as Phil walking around the home, because that's Phil, my nigga, or you'll see in the background, everybody else is eating, like, let's say a bowl of rice or some shit, but he's the one always going to be looking at the main cast. If you watch the race, you know exactly what I'm about to say. Kenya deserves his own video, so I'm not going to dive too much into his character, but Kenya was cold. He gives me Phil vibes, and Phil gives me Kenya vibes. They're just so perceptive. I love a perceptive character in a horror thriller series because it makes it so much better when they're on the forefront of solving a mystery. Like, Kenya was on the forefront of solving that mystery. Phil was definitely a one-of-a-kind character. He was about 5. He was either between ages 4 to 6. There has to be a certain age you have to be before they even ship you out. Even if you have good grades or bad grades, there's a certain age they have to get to for the demons themselves to get a return on their investment, which is time. It takes a lot of time to raise a kid. But in this series, kind of like, because raising a kid just be eating, but you get what I'm saying. They have to get return on their investment, as in making sure they mature enough to at least be decently tasting. So Phil had to be extremely young, but he was more perceptive than most characters in that series. Probably next to Norma, but Norma was a different type of person. But the next thing that pops into my head about how Phil played an integral role was the fact that he stopped Isabella, and when them two dumbass kids were in Isabella's secret room. He did a lot of things. He was meddling in the background. I wish I could go back and read, and I wish I had the time to go back and read, because I would really notice now how he was meddling with the situation. Kind of like how Ray was meddling with generations of children just to get himself sooner or later the perfect odds of surviving or escaping. That was another thing that told me, like, damn, Phil is on a different type of timing. This dude really knows what he's doing, and he really knows what's going on. But there's a lot of things that happen in that whole escape the farm arc. That's not the official name for it, but that's pretty much what it was. That was the goal, escaping that farm, even though it's just ironic that they have to return back to that farm to, of course, save the kids, but actually escape. Their prison was also the doors to freedom. Really cool that they threw that little piece of irony up in there. That was another cold, spicy drizzle of something up in there. They threw that bitch up in there, kissed their fingers first, and drizzled that bitch up in there. That was hard. They went to Goldie Pond, had to end up going right back. And Phil is also cold because he was doing certain things that I don't see any other kid being able to do. I would even have trouble getting Norman or thinking Norman would be able to do something like this. Phil just had that perfect personality to, for one, be a leader, and for two, be able to calm down the people around him. He was training them kids while the whole time Emma was faking that injury. Even though, yeah, Emma was faking the injury. She saw that the other team had five-star recruits. She was like, you know what? My ankle hurt today. Because Emma was fine, really. But she was really trying to act like she was hurting. She was trying to act like she gave up. And that was just code how they orchestrated that. And Phil played an integral role in that. Though flying kites, learning how to fly the kites to wrap around that tree branch they used to zip line across. And Phil was also the glue that kind of held all the little kids together and allowed them to be coachable. Because I don't think those little kids would have been coachable without Phil as their leader. Of course, Norma, Emma, and Ray were the leaders, but Phil was probably the most important leader out of all of that. There was that whole disconnect. Ray wanted to just get out of there. Norman wanted to do what Emma wanted, but he also wanted to be realistic and didn't really believe the idea of everybody living, but he isn't against trying to do it. And Emma, you know, she's a pro-tag. Everybody's got to live. If I'm living, they're living. And that disconnect definitely did stunt the progression of their escape. But I could definitely argue that Phil was the sole reason why they were able to escape with the success that they did. And then we also have to talk about the end of season 1. How Isabella just looked at Phil and was like, my nigga, you was a genius. They got out safely. I fuck with that part heavy. For one, you gotta think about how Phil took it. There's multiple emotions Phil felt. He probably felt relieved because of all the hard work he put in finally paid off. His siblings finally got the taste of freedom, even though he's not sure of how the world is outside the walls. And then second is fear. He's probably on par or close to as smart as Norman. I could see it. Or probably Ray. Because you know, Ray, Emma, and Norman are all extremely gifted. But I think Phil's up there with them, and I feel like if Phil was their age, probably would surpass or be close to Norman. Like, our minds probably run 1,000,000 miles a second. This nigga's mind's probably going 1,000,000 miles a nanosecond. Like, Phil is crunching so many numbers, playing through so many scenarios in his head to kind of finally figure out, when did this lady figure out? How long has she known? What is going to happen to us now? Are we going to get it shipped out earlier than expected? That was their safety ticket. The fact that they needed to mature a little more before they're even sellable. Pretty much at this point, Phil's like, she knows what changes. Because Phil's definitely calculated. He probably thought 4 months to the future. He was thinking, if this happens and this happens and this happens, then I would be here. But the fact that Isabella knew threw a wrench into probably a lot of the plans he had for the future. He probably came up, by the time he finished, you know, that crazy, scared, dumbfounded, excited look that Phil had when Isabella told him that. It was about a 2-second pause. Like, he was buffering. Phil was literally buffering. Never seen Phil buffer like that. And in that 2 seconds, he probably did more thinking and came to a better conclusion than most people would have. He had no ground under his feet, but he probably found a conclusion that made enough sense, and he was again grounded. For an example, he probably was like, oh, she knows now, I have to make sure that I watch over my siblings a little more because things may be more strict type shit. And it was also smart about it. He didn't stay looking stuck for too long. If you stay looking stuck for too long, it's GG. But it's already GG, really. But you have to also realize that Isabella was kind of on their side too. Isabella was Emma herself at one point. Even though I feel like Promised Neverland was a masterpiece, I honestly feel like they did the story a huge disservice in not following Phil after Emma and Ray left Gracefield. It would have been cool to watch Phil's mental gymnastics after they left, where Phil is pretty much worrying where Emma and Ray are, how far they've progressed, if there's even a human world outside the walls. Phil's probably crunching all this data. He probably came to the conclusion himself months or weeks ago that life outside the walls is probably going to be harder than life inside the walls. It's quite possible that Phil is probably ready to lead his own revolution. He was probably setting things up to where if Emma and Ray fail, even though Phil had a great deal of faith in Emma, I wouldn't put it past him to be ready to have a plan himself to escape with the kids. I won't put that past Phil. And it would have been cool to see like Phil growing up a bit, him laying down the foundation of a plan to escape himself. That would've been really cool to watch. Just say Emma's and Goldie Pond, boom, we flip to Phil talking to another kid that was pretty smart. And I think Connie was also a smart kid, because I remember Connie and Phil being close. I'm not sure. I'm probably just speculating at this point. Or I'm probably mixing up Connie with another unnamed character in the series. But yeah, Phil actually had another kid with him that was also staring at the main cast in the background too. I want to dive to that character a little bit, because that's another cool thing, like how Phil probably had another person with him that was probably not as smart as him, but close to as perceptive, and that would have worked out in his favor if things didn't work out for Emma, Ray, and Norman. If they got dropped off, the next generation would have had Phil and this other girl as their leaders towards freedom. That would have been cool to see. I'm quite sure that could have been playing out behind the scenes when we're looking at Norman with, I think, Elbita children. Lambita, yeah, Lambita or Lambada, I don't know. Phil with the Lambita children and shit. Emma with Mr. Hugo. In other words, I just wish they went back to Phil and allowed him to get more screen time than he did after that first initial arc. I think it would have made the series a little better. But yeah, that is Phil. Phil is the Kenya of Promised Neverland. And he just has that innocent look that makes him really anime protagonist ready. Look at Shinji Ikari, look at Pride off of Fullmetal Alchemist, look at Zatch off of Zatch Bell, look at like Astro Boy, or look at Satoru off of Erase. Like, these guys have that distinct look, even though Satoru is more nonchalant as an adult, but if you look at him as a kid, he has that same look in his eye as Phil. So I just fuck with it all. And I like this video because it's more or less just a discussion, because Phil is cool and I think we need to talk about it. Yeah, I appreciate you niggas for watching. We got more videos like this coming out probably for Promised Neverland, Claymore, Berserk. When I finish it, The Greymon needs a video. I'm happy that people are finally giving The Greymon a little bit of respect, because I was watching that shit when it was being released, I think weekly or monthly. Or not watching, I was reading it. Me reading, I was like, bro, this is probably some of the best shonen I've read. The Greymon has points in their story and their plot and their art that makes it top tier shonen. Like GOAT level shonen. It's just, it fell off the face of the earth after Hollows came out. So, but the current and most recent chapters of The Greymon are the best chapters that The Greymon's ever released, and they're finally answering the questions that we've had throughout the entirety of the series. Go read The Greymon. Hey man, appreciate you next for watching. Probably gonna talk about Erase soon. I think some of these characters in Erase are code. Kiss you on the left cheek, slap on the right. I'll see y'all when I see y'all, man.